Joe, I want to start with you. Spurs.
Okay.
So the bloke who wasn't good enough for them has replaced the bloke thereafter. Is that ridiculous?
I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of this appointment, it has to be said. I do want to give him a little bit of time, Paratici, in terms of his selection, because if you're going to put Paratici in that position to select a manager, then let him select who he wants to pick. In terms of Fonseca, I'm not exactly inspired, and I'm not sure the likes of Harry Kane are going to be particularly inspired by that selection. Let's face it, this was a particularly mediocre Roma side. There were options across Italy for him. None of the clubs wanted him in Italy. Inter Milan went for Inzaghi, Juve went for Allegri, Lazio went for Sarri. They conceded 58 goals this season. He got kicked out of the Coppa Italia against Spezia when he accidentally made 6 substitutions instead of the allowed 5. He fielded an ineligible player in the first game of the season where they automatically lost 3-0 to Verona. They've been beaten by CSK Sofia, lost 6-2 to United, 4-0 to Napoli. I'm not exactly inspired by this choice by Paratici, to be honest with you.
Ade, we understand, went for Nagelsmann, they went for Ten Hag, Pochettino, Conte. Are Spurs, a so-called Big Six club, unable to get the best?
Yeah, seems like it, right? It seems like they are. To be fair with Spurs, you're going to wonder what exactly the project here is. I mean, all those managers, good names you mentioned there, Mike, but all very different in terms of the style and approach to football. So Spurs need to understand what exactly they're looking for in terms of what they want to see on the pitch and pick a manager that almost fits that mold and fits that. I don't know if Fonseca does it. I mean, Joe read out some of the damning statistics there, and he's right. Look, he's not a top manager. Spurs are a top club. I mean, if you're a Spurs fan and you're linked with a Pochettino return and Conte, who won Serie A with Inter Milan, and then you get Fonseca, it's not going to make you happy at breakfast time this morning. Harry Kane isn't going to stay and look to stay at that project. And I just don't think it's an appointment that inspires belief that Spurs really want to take it to that next level. I will say this about Fonseca, though. Look, he got a very weak and limp Roma side to a semi-final in the Europa League. Yes, they got manhandled by United, but that's United. United are a juggernaut. He done very well with Shakhtar Donetsk before that. I think it was a 72% win rate in the Ukrainian league. And some people might laugh about the Ukrainian league. It still is a competitive league. Before that, done well with Braga as well. I do think we're quick to kind of throw managers under the bus when it doesn't work in one club. Let's see what he can do if he gets the opportunity. He gets a bit more money to spend. He has had no money to spend at all at Roma, so there could still be a very good manager in there. But again, if you're falling from Jose Mourinho to Conte to Fonseca, there's a problem there.
Let's ask the Spurs fan. Jamie, what do you think?
Well, I was just going to say to Joe, Joe, everybody seems so keen to point out the fact that last season wasn't the greatest for him at Roma. As I understand it, they were doing pretty well until they had a spate of injuries, and that really sort of halted them in their tracks. Everyone loves to point out he didn't do too well at Porto either, but he won a Portuguese Cup with Braga, who are sort of 5th, 6th place side in that league, and he won 3 doubles in a row in Ukraine. You can't turn your nose up at that.
No, and I'm not writing him off by any means. He might be the appointment that works for Tottenham. We've seen project managers work for Tottenham in the past. Pochettino came in, didn't have a huge amount of pedigree behind him. Obviously, he'd done well at Southampton. But this could be a similar sort of appointment, and I think that's the kind of appointment that Levy wanted in the first place, isn't it? So let's not totally write him off. But I think just because he won 3 doubles at Shakhtar, Lucescu won 4 doubles at Shakhtar. He's now managing Dynamo Kiev. I don't think that is the pedigree Tottenham fans will be after. I've seen Tottenham fans on my timeline raging this morning with this appointment, and I think Adi mentioned it just there. He didn't spend much at Roma. Maybe that's one of the reasons that Daniel Levy has identified him, that he can get the job done with a tight budget, because Tottenham is going to have a tight budget unless they sell Harry Kane. And if you're Harry Kane, Jamie, does the arrival of Fonseca make you want to stay?
But it's not up to Harry Kane whether he stays or not. He's got 3 years left in a contract.
But would you want to stay if you saw Fonseca?
Harry Kane doesn't get to decide whether he goes or not.
If Conte came through the door, he might well have persuaded some. He might well have said, I've won 5 titles in 7 seasons.
Yeah.
I'm going to come here and I'm going to compete for trophies. What does Fonseca come through the door and say to Harry Kane to make him stay?
But Harry Kane stays unless somebody puts up the cash to pay for Harry Kane, £150 million plus. Harry Kane can't just decide, well, I'm off. It's not up to him. He's under contract.
Jamie, what Harry Kane does do what he does do if he doesn't get a manager that inspires him, he puts a transfer request in. That's something that Harry Kane hasn't done yet. Right now, it's all a case of, whether or not someone can afford him. If Harry Kane has a manager that comes in and doesn't inspire him, then a transfer request comes in immediately after the Euros. And that's the danger of someone like a Paulo Fonseca. I'm with Joe here. If Conte comes through the door, then it's a different conversation. Conte's like, okay, look at the CV, look what I've won, stick with me and we can do something here. Yeah. If Pochettino returns, it's a case of, okay, look, remember what we built before, got to the Champions League final, nearly won the league. Okay, maybe I stay. If Fonseca comes in, it's like, okay, look what I've done with Roma. Yeah. It's not going to work. That's not going to work. That's not going to inspire you, so there's a problem there.
Okay, the Conte ship has sailed, so it's no use crying over spilt milk on that front. But I want to make a comparison, Addy, and hear me out in this one. So people saying, oh yeah, anybody can win the league in Ukraine, and he's won a Portuguese Cup, so what? Let me make a comparison. Everybody would say, well, anybody can win the league with Celtic in Scotland. Brendan Rodgers did that back-to-back. Then he won a cup with Leicester. It's exactly the same as Fonseca's CV, and everyone was clamouring for Rodgers.
It's a bit different with Rodgers, just because we saw what he did in the Premier League with Liverpool. He took a poor Liverpool team that was struggling down the second near the lower half of the table. He came, he took them to nearly a title, and it just didn't quite work. So Brendan Rodgers always had that kind of backup from what he did at Liverpool. Then obviously Celtic, you're correct. With Fonseca, we don't know it. We haven't seen anything yet, unfortunately. So look, there are going to be big question marks. But again, I think for Tottenham fans, it is waking up this morning knowing other managers that you've been linked with. And why now Fonseca? Yeah. And if you're Fonseca, do you want to really come into a club where you're 8th or 9th choice? And there has been that many managers being linked. So look, I think it's a strange decision. Look, it's the one that hasn't been announced yet, so we will have to wait and see. But I think it's a strange one, just because stylistically, in the way in which Fonseca set up Roma, it's not what Spurs fans want to see. So it will surprise me if it gets done.
Joe, how much pressure is Daniel Levy under?
Oh, immense pressure. He's under absolutely immense pressure. But I think the appointment of a sporting director will hopefully take some pressure off Daniel Levy's shoulders. I'm sure that's what he's hoping with the Paratici appointment, that he can come in and make some sort of footballing decisions that take the spotlight away from Daniel Levy, shift it onto Paratici, and he did have a good record, at Juventus. You can't deny that. And I think he would have hoped, I'm pretty sure, that Conte came through the door. But we've talked about that ship sailing now, so there's no point going back to it. And if Paratici wants Fonseca, Spurs fans are just going to have to trust this appointment. He knows more about football than any of us do, probably.
Exactly.
So Daniel Levy is appointing Paratici. Paratici is appointing Fonseca. You've just got to trust your new sporting director. If it all goes wrong, blame Paratici.